Let's take a look at some charts on EOS from the latest article on Brave New Coin. So although EOS sits in the top 10 by market cap, really much of the news and underlying fundamentals of EOS haven't changed much over the past 5 months, at least. I try to search high, far, and wide for as much relevant information as I can. And it's kind of the same story over and over again with EOS. They're having centralization issues, they're having scalability issues. Get to that in a second. By market cap, they're still essentially correlated with BNB 88 LTC. I mean, the EOS LTC charts look almost identical. So if you're ever considering rotating in and out of one of those, I would check both at all times. Just have them both up together because they move together. I don't know if it's some ARB bot that has been ARBing them, some algo together. I don't know. It's kind of weird. The networks are completely kind of polar opposites of each other, but regardless, the prices move almost identical. I don't have XTZ or Link on here because for some reason TradingView won't load those market caps, but they're in the mix as well, up in the top 10. Just to rehash the ICO stuff from the glory days of EOS, they raised a couple billion in ETH. They sold it all. They paid some fines to the SEC, settled a bunch of things, and they still have a bunch of money. Block one, that is, the creators of EOS. So you'd think that we'd have some innovation here, we'd have some scaling stuff happening. There'd be more happening with EOS over the past 2 years plus now. Personally, I'm just not seeing it. We're seeing Rex, we're seeing Voice Beta that got launched on another chain. I haven't really seen or heard much about Voice since it was launched. I haven't seen or heard much about EOS dApps. I haven't seen or heard much about EOS DeFi stuff. It's just kind of crickets, other than the problems that have emerged. If we look at the validators, now this is a preview for what's to come for Tezos, what's to come for ETH, what's to come for ADA. This is a problem with the proof of stake coins. I say this every video on every proof of stake coin, but it's true. If a majority of the coins sit on exchanges, or a high percentage of them, there will be eventually governance issues where OKCoin, Bitfinex, Nudex, all these exchanges have different priorities than the users. There will be ballot stuffing, there will be voting on the user's behalf. It's an issue for EOS currently. I think Tezos is prime for that down the road, and ETH most certainly will have that issue eventually. The other issue is the geographical distribution here. Most of these are in Asia. Most of these, well, 9 of them are in China, I think. Yeah, 9 of them are in China. So there's some definite weaknesses here for proof of stake. So not much has changed on that front for EOS, certainly. And if we're talking about Sybil attacks or ballot stuffing, this is what I'm talking about. You're getting just new validators pop up with no information, kind of anonymous. And this was a while ago. This was a few months ago now, but this stuff will keep happening where you get an entity creating validators out of nowhere, right? And then all of a sudden they're in the top 21, unless we know the details explicitly for all of these validators, their physical addresses, who they are, what their affiliations are. Like, they cannot be anonymous. They just can't be, because you're going to run into centralization issues. If we look at the GitHub for EOS, kind of trending down over the past 2 years, which kind of makes sense if there hasn't really been quote-unquote innovation. This is on the main chain, so there's other GitHub repos that have commits, but I'm not seeing much activity on the main repo here. If we look at all the proof-of-stake coins, this is another issue that EOS is going to run into. They're not the only big boy in the yard anymore. As far as notional value locked, you've got new coins like Band and DOT and Atom. You've got coins that are rotating into proof-of-stake like ADA. Algo is new. SNX is new. Kava is new. These are the DeFi coins. Divi, never heard of that one. Probably a DeFi coin. XTZ is still the biggest, I'm pretty sure, notional value. Tron is just, most of it's not real, so it's hard to take anything seriously for Tron as far as data is concerned. But the point is here that EOS isn't the only big boy in the yard anymore. There are a lot of proof-of-stake coins now that have more than 50% of their value locked in staking. EOS has like 50 to 60 on any given day locked in staking. If If you look at transactions per day and blocks per day produced, this is kind of the only reliable data that we can actually pull off of the EOS chain. It's feeless, so we can't look at fees. The average transaction sizes are kind of all over the place because there's no fees. You can see here where the scaling issues arose when blocks per day just dropped way down. That was because of a massive airdrop at the time. And it just kind of killed the chain temporarily. And it's just started to recover over the past 8 months, slowly. But there's a lot less activity. Now it's easy to say like this was not organic activity. It was probably just spam or random junk. Whereas now it's realer than it was before. If we look at the RAM costs for EOS, they continue to decline, which was another scalability concern early on. It's not so much anymore. If you look at the top dApps on EOS, they are mostly gambling dApps or exchanges or scams, but mostly gambling. I mean, let's be real, exchanges are equivalent to gambling, right? Nudex has quite a few users though, so it's actually the shining beacon on a hill as far as a dApp that's actually seeing activity, strong activity across the board. If we look at Google Trends, it's basically flat over the past 2 years, a little bit of an uptick over the past few months, but in general, nothing has even come close to ICO mania for EOS, which is reflected in the price, really. If we look at technicals, we have Bitfinex long shorts at the top here. You can see the longs have increased pretty massively over the past few weeks. VPVR, volume profile, yearly pivots, 50, 200 EMA, RSI, and volume. First thing that caught my eye was obviously this long short ratio. It's just super heavy long. Second thing, the 5200 EMAs are getting ready to cross bullish for the third time ever. Historically, these crosses haven't lasted very long. There hasn't been like a multi-month bull trend here on EOS besides when it was running the ICO. So it's hard to say this will be lasting. It's got resistance at 450, 550, 9. There's tons of levels up here for resistance. It's hard to think it gets past 20 anytime soon. Even 10 is going to be a big ask, I think. But it does look good for up in the near term. Looking at this Pitchfork, a Pitchfork is a trend channel with specific rules, and in general it's encapsulated most of EOS's price history. It's certainly held above the upper half of this Pitchfork, so if it's trending down, it's obviously bearish. It's tried to break out twice, and the only reason I'm adding a wing here is because it catches the bottom here. So in general, price is going to want to come back to this yellow line, the median, over and over and over. So if it can't break out here, like it didn't here, it's going back to this yellow line. It's too early to say one way or the other definitively what's going to happen here. The closer it gets to 345 and breaks above it, the more bullish certainly it'll get. It'll cross out of the orbit of this gravity, right, that wants to pull it back down. So it's got a chance, along with this 5200, to actually go somewhere. If you look at the daily cloud, similar to that 5200 cross, it is bullish. Previous Kumo breakouts have been short-lived, so it's hard to expect a multi-week, multi-month thing here. But at the very least, 3 drives is what I'd expect. So if we're on the first drive, I'd expect 2 more drives, just like we got in 2019. It's hard to say how high the drives will go, but if you're a trend following trader, you're just in and holding, waiting for that bearish divergence or bearish reversal sign or trend flip before you're exiting that position. And lastly, looking at EOS Btc, it's pretty much been nothing but down since the ICO. EOS has underperformed BTC pretty significantly. You can see it's had these periods of consolidation that have attempted to break up and just been sold off, attempted to break up, sold off. So expect another attempt into 37K sats. It's got to climb the ladder, right? So it's got to go back to this previous support resist consolidation zone. There's going to be a ton of people who are looking to sell that zone, who are trapped and holding from that zone. So it's going to take time to crawl out of 37 any higher. However, when it gets above 37, it's going to be above the 200 again, above the daily cloud. So 50 to 60K sats isn't crazy over the next 6 months based on trend. It's just got a long slog to go, just like the USD pair. It's got all these levels on the way up of massive volume anyone who's holding from those prices is going to be happy to sell at break even once it gets there, most likely. So fundamentals for EOS are certainly not great. I think the centralization issues will get worse. The blockchain size is indeterminate. The number of full nodes is indeterminate. That's an issue. Again, pointing to centralization problems, because if there's only 3 full nodes running on the network and you need to pull the data of all the dApps of all transactions that have ever happened, you're relying on very few non-decentralized ways to do that. Technicals look probably better than they've looked in months, since March at least. I mean, it's kind of at the mercy of the rest of the market as far as EOS dollar price. And if the market is buoyant, then EOS dollar is going to be buoyant. It's just unlikely to overperform or outperform Bitcoin anytime soon.